What do you really know about the man Bob Marley called his teacher?
My dad is always singing and we're always going to watch him sing and people just loved him. I was really young, so I didn't really understand it.
At just 12 years old, Marla Brown lost the father the world knew as the Crown Prince of Reggae.
1999, the world was stunned when Dennis Brown died suddenly at just 42 years old.
Now, decades later, she's pulling back the curtain on Dennis Brown's private life.
I always say it's just a normal upbringing. I mean, for us, it was never complete star and fame and stuff like that.
Revealing the man behind the music, the husband of her mother, Yvonne, the balanced and the heartbreaking final moments that still haunt her. The funeral changed everything. Standing there, watching over 10,000 mourners flood Kingston's National Heroes Park, young Marla finally understood. Her father belonged to the world, but what the world didn't see is what happened behind closed doors between London and Jamaica. That's the story she's ready to tell. The phone call she never made. June 30th, 1999. A date burned into memory like a scar that never quite heals. Marla picks up the phone. Her father's in Jamaica, not feeling well, resting. She hesitates. Should I call now or wait until tomorrow? It's such a small decision, the kind you make 100 times without thinking. Tomorrow, she decides. Let him rest. She'll call tomorrow when he's feeling better. They'll talk then, like they always do, about music, about family, about nothing and everything. Unfortunately, tomorrow never came. By the next evening, Dennis Brown was gone. Cardiac arrest, a collapsed lung. The Crown Prince of Reggae, dead at 42.
1999, the world was stunned when Dennis Brown died suddenly at just 42 years old.
My father was a man who could fill stadiums with his voice, but couldn't escape the weight crushing his own chest, Marla said. She became the daughter who would spend the rest of her life replaying that moment. The phone in her hand, the decision to wait, the tomorrow that dissolved into never. How do you carry that? The knowledge that your last chance to speak slipped away because you wanted to be considerate? Because you thought there would be more time. I was only 12, Marla reflects now, her voice carrying the weight of years. At that age, you don't understand finality. You think your parents are invincible. But my father was a human being, as fragile as any of us, despite the superhuman voice that made the world believe otherwise. The cruel irony haunts her still. Dennis Brown, who recorded over 75 albums filled with words of love and wisdom.
Dennis Brown has recorded over 75 albums. Brown was one of the most prolific reggae artists of all time.
The silence before the truth. There are moments in life that arrive quietly, almost unnoticed, yet they reshape everything that follows. A phone call not made, a goodbye left unfinished, a sentence that stays locked inside the chest forever. For Marla Brown, that moment came wrapped in silence, the kind of silence that screams louder than words. She went silent before she could tell her father one last time that she loved him, before she could hear his voice again, before she could believe that tomorrow would never come. Regret doesn't fade with time. It doesn't soften or loosen its grip. Instead, it settles in, becoming part of who you are. It weaves itself into every breath you take, every memory you replay, every song that finds its way into your soul. For Marla, that regret became inseparable from love, from loss, and from the weight of a legacy few children are ever asked to carry. Her father was Dennis Brown, the Crown Prince of Reggae, a man whose voice defined generations, whose music crossed oceans, borders, and cultures, and whose name lit up faces long before people ever knew hers. To the world, he was a legend. To her, he was simply Dad, the man who sang around the house, who laughed easily, who filled rooms with warmth, rhythm, and joy, the man she lost too soon. But what happens when the man you love belongs to the world? What happens when your private grief collides with public mourning? And what happens when, years later, you begin to uncover truths you were too young to understand when he was alive? This is not just a story of Dennis Brown. It is a story of the life he lived behind the music, the balance he struggled to maintain, and the quiet battles no one applauded. It is a story of a daughter growing up between two worlds, London and Jamaica, anonymity and fame, family intimacy and global recognition. And it is the story of how legacy can feel both like a blessing and a burden. Mara's childhood was defined by contrast. One world was gray skies and structured routines, ballet classes and school mornings in London. The other was heat and color, rhythm and reverence. Jamaica streets pulsing with the music her father helped shape. She didn't just move between countries. She moved between identities, between being just a child and being Dennis Brown's daughter. As a young girl, she didn't understand what it meant to carry a famous name. She didn't yet see the cost of living two lives, of loving an artist whose soul was always split between creation and obligation. She didn't know what sacrifices were being made quietly or which demons were being fought behind closed doors. Those truths would only come later, after the music stopped and the silence set in. This video is about uncovering those truths. It's about the man Dennis Brown was when the stage lights were off, about the father who needed balance as much as he gave love, about the addiction no one wanted to talk about the funeral that changed everything, and about the legacy that didn't end with death, but demanded to be carried forward. Most importantly, it's about Mara, about how a child grows into the shadow of a legend and eventually finds her own voice within it, about how love survives loss, and about how music becomes more than sound. It becomes memory, inheritance, and responsibility. So take a moment, close your eyes, and imagine what it would be like to love someone the world refuses to let go of. Because before the Crown Prince of Reggae became immortal, he was a father. And before the legend, there was a little girl who just wanted one more chance to say, "I love you." A childhood between two worlds. To understand Mara Brown, you first have to understand the world she was born into, a world divided not by conflict, but by contrast. Her childhood unfolded across two completely different realities, each shaping her in ways she wouldn't fully comprehend until much later. London and Jamaica, order and freedom, visibility and anonymity. Together, they formed the foundation of her identity and quietly prepared her for the complicated legacy she would one day inherit. In London, life followed a rhythm that felt structured and predictable. Gray skies stretched over streets lined with terrace houses. School mornings came with packed lunches, uniforms, and schedules. Ballet classes demanded discipline, posture, repetition. There was a sense of propriety in everything, from manners to movement. It was a life that emphasized control, routine, and stability. And for Mara, it was home. But there was another home waiting for her across the ocean. Jamaica wasn't just a destination. It was an experience. The air was thicker, warmer, alive with sound. Music poured out of shops, cars, and street corners. Conversations happened loudly and openly. Strangers smiled easily. And everywhere she went, her last name meant something. In Jamaica, Dennis Brown wasn't just her father. He was a cultural monument. For a child, moving between these two worlds was disorienting. In London, Mara could walk through the streets unnoticed. She was a student, a dancer, a daughter. In Jamaica, she was Dennis Brown's child. People's eyes lit up when they heard her name. Their voices softened, then grew excited. Some spoke with reverence, others with familiarity, as if they knew her simply because they loved him. That duality followed her everywhere. Growing up between London and Jamaica wasn't only about geography. It was about identity, about learning which version of yourself belonged where. In London, Dennis Brown was a working artist and a family man. He recorded in studios, wrote music, and came home to dinners, laughter, and children running through the house. To Mara and her siblings, he wasn't a superstar. He was Dad, the man who sang around the house, who danced in the hallway, who turned ordinary mornings into unforgettable moments. We were like the Brady Bunch, Mara would later recall with a laugh. Mornings were filled with music and noise. Siblings harmonized naturally, voices overlapping as if rehearsal wasn't necessary. Dennis led impromptu performances, sometimes channeling Michael Jackson, complete with moonwalks and spins. These moments weren't staged. They weren't planned. They were simply who he was. But Jamaica revealed another side of him. There, Dennis Brown belonged not just to his family, but to his people. Festivals, recording sessions, interviews, and constant recognition followed him wherever he went. Reggae culture pulsed through Kingston streets, and Dennis was at his heart. He wasn't choosing between London and Jamaica. He was trying to live fully in both. And that required balance few people ever master. For Mara, Jamaica meant holidays at first, a break from school, a sense of adventure. But as she grew older, it became something deeper. It was where she began to understand her father's legacy, why his music mattered, why his presence commanded respect, why strangers treated her family with reverence simply because of their name. The Brown children, Dina, Daniel, Dennis Jr., Jason, Deborah, Mara, and their siblings, shared more than just blood. They shared an identity their father intentionally shaped. Each of them carried his initials, D. Brown. It wasn't accidental. It was Dennis's way of binding them together, of creating unity even when oceans separated them. My father believed family names carried power, Mara explains. They carried responsibility and legacy, and yet that legacy came with weight. Mara watched her father navigate two musical worlds as naturally as breathing. In London, he was deeply connected to the lovers' rock scene that dominated the sound systems. In Jamaica, he was rooted in traditional reggae, the heartbeat of the island. He never chose one over the other. Instead, he fused them, creating a sound that didn't belong to a single place, but resonated everywhere. But splitting yourself between two worlds has a cost. For a child, that cost often shows up as absence. Dennis traveled constantly. Tours, recordings, performances pulled him in every direction. There were moments when school plays happened without him. Birthdays passed while he was overseas. Gaps formed where a father should have been, but wasn't. And yet, when he was home, he was fully present. Mara remembers that clearly. Dennis didn't just occupy space, he filled it. He gave his children undivided attention. Late-night sing-alongs, conversations about life hidden inside song lyrics, spontaneous dancing in the living room. These weren't occasional treats. They were expressions of his love. Her parents balanced each other in ways she only understood later. Her mother, Yvonne, brought structure, discipline, and grounding. Dennis brought creativity, warmth, and joy. Together, they created a home that felt full, even when the world outside was demanding pieces of him. Still, the child doesn't always see the cracks forming beneath the surface. Mara didn't yet understand what it took for her father to live this double life. The pressure of constant creation, the emotional cost of fame, the exhaustion of being needed everywhere at once. To her, he was simply the man who made the house come alive. Only years later would she ask the questions that lingered quietly in the background. What did it cost him to live between two worlds? And what parts of him did she never get the chance to know? The man who needed balance. Here's what most people never understood about Dennis Brown. For all his talent, for all his success, for all the love that poured out his music, he was a man who needed balance. Not applause, not admiration. Balance. And that balance came from one person more than anyone else, Yvonne. Their story didn't begin on a stage or in a recording studio. It began by chance, the way the most life-altering stories often do. London, 1974. Finsbury Park. Yvonne Hashu was simply walking down the street to buy fish and chips when she heard noise coming from the Rainbow Theater. Curious, she looked inside. Backstage, she met a 17-year-old Jamaican singer with kind eyes and a voice so powerful it seemed impossible for someone so young. His name was Dennis Brown. He asked her to go to a club. It was the weekend. She said yes. 2 years later, they were married. To the world, they became reggae royalty, the Crown Prince and his queen. Fans saw glamour, romance, and success. But inside the home, the reality was far more human, more complex, more fragile. Mom was a disciplinarian. Mara explains with a quiet smile. Dad was easygoing, loving, caring, sharing. That contrast defined their household. Dennis was warmth and spontaneity. Yvonne was structure and consistency. He floated, she anchored, and while the world celebrated Dennis's creativity, Yvonne quietly carried a weight that made everything else possible. Creative souls often resist boundaries, even when they need them. Dennis was no exception. His mind was always moving, writing, composing, creating, performing. Music wasn't just his career, it was his identity. And while that creativity gave the world timeless songs, also meant someone else had to manage the realities of daily life. That someone was Yvonne. She ensured the children were fed, educated, disciplined, and emotionally supported. She managed schedules, routines, and expectations. She kept the household functioning, while Dennis moved between studios, tours, and continents. Including Dennis's firstborn daughter from a previous relationship, Yvonne raised 6 children under one roof, creating unity where others might have seen division. It wasn't easy. Dennis toured constantly. Jamaica, Europe, festivals, recordings. Albums were made in Kingston, while his family waited in London. Performances happened while school events were missed. Birthdays came and went. Each absence left a small gap, a space where a father should have been. And yet, Mara insists something important. My father was a present father. She doesn't mean physically present all the time. She means emotionally present. When Dennis was home, he was there. He listened. He played. He engaged. He didn't disappear into silence or distance. He made each child feel seen, heard, and valued. Late nights turned into sing-alongs. Ordinary evenings became dance performances. Lessons about life were delivered through lyrics rather than lectures. Music wasn't entertainment in their house. It was communication. Yvonne once reflected on Dennis's character with clarity and honesty. He wasn't flashy. He wasn't a show-off. His humility and kindness defined him as much as his voice did. These qualities made him beloved not just as an artist, but as a man. But humility doesn't pay bills. And kindness doesn't raise children alone. That was Yvonne's quiet burden. She carried it without complaint, without applause, without recognition. While the world celebrated Dennis's genius, Yvonne made sure the family didn't collapse beneath the pressure of fame. Yet, there was another weight she carried, one that stayed hidden for years. Something darker. Something no one wanted to talk about. Mara was too young to fully understand at the time. As a child, you notice changes before you understand their meaning. Mood shifts, fatigue, tension in the air, conversations that stop when you enter the room. Adults learn how to hide pain. Children learn how to sense it. Dennis's struggle didn't announce itself loudly at first. It crept in quietly, subtly, then steadily grew. For the world, Dennis Brown remained the Crown Prince of Reggae. For his family, especially Yvonne, the balancing act became heavier with each passing year. Loving a creative genius often means loving someone who is at war with themselves. And no amount of devotion can fight that battle for them. Still, Yvonne stayed. She grounded him. She believed in him. She protected the children from truths they were too young to carry. And Dennis, in his own way, tried to give everything he could. Love, music, presence when possible. He wasn't a man who withheld affection. If anything, he gave too much of himself to his fans, to his art, to the message of love and unity he sang about endlessly. That generosity was both his greatest strength and his greatest vulnerability. As Mara grew older, she would come to understand something painful but honest. Being loved deeply doesn't always mean being saved. Sometimes, love holds you together just long enough to keep going. Sometimes, it simply bears witness. And sometimes, it isn't enough. The hidden struggle no one wanted to see. Every family has secrets. Some are harmless stories that resurface years later with laughter. Others are wounds. Deep, unspoken fractures that shape everything around them. Dennis Brown's secret belonged to the second kind. It wasn't something people discussed openly, not in interviews, not in headlines, and certainly not around children. But it was there, quietly tightening its grip long before anyone dared to name it. My father was a brilliant artist, Mara says carefully, choosing each word as a stepping across fragile ground. But brilliance often comes with demons. For Dennis Brown, that demon was cocaine. Addiction rarely arrives like a storm. It slips in slowly, disguised as control, confidence, energy. At first, it seems manageable, invisible. Then it becomes routine, necessary, and eventually it consumes everything in its path. Dennis's addiction didn't erase his love for his family, nor did it diminish his passion for music. But it did steal pieces of him, his health, his stability, and ultimately his time. For a child, addiction is confusing. You don't understand causes or consequences. You only feel changes. You notice when laughter becomes strained, when absences last longer, when promises are made with sincerity but broken by circumstance. Marla didn't have the language to describe what was happening, but she felt it. Children always do. Dennis's health began to deteriorate noticeably in the late 1990s. Years of substance abuse took a visible toll. Respiratory issues became chronic. Breathing, something most people take for granted, turned into a daily struggle. Each breath required effort. Each performance demanded more from a body that was already exhausted. The irony was devastating. The man whose voice once seemed limitless was now fighting for air. His career, once unstoppable, began to falter. Shows were missed. Recording schedules became unpredictable. The industry that once revolved around him slowly moved forward, impatient and unforgiving. Dennis Brown had released more than 75 albums. He had shaped an entire genre. Yet even legends are not immune to decline. Still, he kept going. In May 1999, Dennis toured Brazil alongside reggae icons Gregory Isaacs, Max Romeo, and Lloyd Parks. It should have been a celebration, a gathering of giants. Instead, it became the beginning of the end. All four men fell ill during the tour. The others recovered. Dennis didn't. For Marla, this is the part that still hurts the most. My father gave everything to his music, she says, to his fans, to his message of love and unity, but he couldn't save himself. That truth sits heavy. The very qualities that made Dennis Brown extraordinary, his relentless drive, his refusal to stop creating, his need to give, also push him beyond his body's limits. Rest felt like betrayal. Slowing down felt impossible. The stage still called to him, even as his health begged him to stop. People often ask the same questions after a loss like this. Could someone have intervened sooner? Could love have been enough to pull him back? Could Yvonne's balancing act have included this weight too? Dennis Brown wasn't just a legend. He was a father, a teacher, and a voice that carried love across generations. And through Marla, through his music, and through every life he touched, that voice never truly faded. His story reminds us that legacy isn't about fame, it's about impact. If Dennis Brown's music has ever meant something to you, let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story so the Crown Prince of Reggae's legacy continues to live on. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.